Hello. Today we're here with Remica Bingham-Risher, and she is a poet, an essayist, and an Etruscan poet. Her book from Etruscan came out in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's right. Almost 10 years.
Time ago.
Wow.
And it was called What We Ask from Flesh. So I'm going to ask Remica to read the poem that she's contributing to Sign and Breath.
So this is at Northside Skatepark. The men are boys. The boys are men. They are screaming obscenities and love overwhelms them. My boy is a fire, helmet wrapped in flames. They invent ways to one-up each other, pulling barrels and battlers into the space. They are not kind to one another or themselves, but they persist, swift as mistakes, coming and disappearing. The concrete is stronger than their bodies. Some ride broken, some break. What balance it takes to slide over rails and stairways to hold dear what hurts. They tarry between what the world wants for them and their own thirst, to care less or adore everything unseen, the air that carries them, the children nearby beckoning, the music only some can hear. It's hammering and reckoning.
Thank you, Remica. I've had the privilege of hearing you read and recite, and you're a marvelous performer. So I have to ask, what role do you think that orality plays in your composition, in your practice?
Oh, the answer is twofold. It plays a huge part in the way that I compose poems, because I think of poetry as it is, as an oral and oral art, right? Hearing and oral art. And so I'm always thinking about sound and how that might work in the poem to kind of ground the reader, but also kind of move you down the page. And this poem in particular is about, boys skateboarding at a skate park. So you gotta it's gotta be swift in places, right? So I'm always thinking about how whatever the thing is that I'm writing on it, it's really musical, like the way that they intertwine themselves. It's also scary. But, so I was thinking about that in particular here, like what kind of music they make. I don't think about performance as in how it will be read aloud a whole lot, like on the stage. I think that's just kind of part of my natural composition, to think about how another reader might come to it. But I don't think too much about, I'm not from a performance background as a poet. I'm a poet of the page first, but like very intimately and deeply concerned with the way that I translate work off the page. So I'm always thinking about how well I can compose it there and build in enough music there that it translates off the page, no matter who's reading it.
Let me ask you, this project, Sign and Breath, is basically asking us to look at poetry in a slightly different way, to embrace the possibility that it might not merely be a set of conventions, but it might be an idea or something that thrums through all work. For you, how would you describe the genesis of your voice? That's a big question, Remica, but I know that when I think of your work, I think so much of the individuality of the voice. And I'm just curious where that might come from.
A great many things. I have a memoir coming out, a book of prose coming out later this year. And the thing about writing the memoir is called Soul Culture, Black Poets, Books and Questions That Grew Me Up. So really it is a rumination on like how I came to the writing life. And so a lot of the things that I ended up asking myself in those essays first is, why do you do it like this? Right? Like who are those influences? So I interviewed poets for a long time in my career, and 10 of them are kind of highlighted in that book. And so I think, to get back to your question, part of the genesis of my voice is reading and then trying to embody the voice of others that just really arrested me. Tim Siebels, who we mentioned off camera before we started, is a mentor of mine, and will hopefully be part of this project, as well as an Etruscan author. And I think, having Tim as a teacher of mine, and I came to him on the page first and was immediately taken with what happens sonically in his work. And then I saw him read and I thought, crap, I didn't know it could get better. Right. So, Patricia Smith is another poet that shows up in that collection of essays and interviews. And if you know anything about Patricia Smith, she's kind of the goddess of performance. Right. But also really and truly has become a goddess after performance of form and formal convention. Her Motown crown of sonnets, I think, that is a series that I'm always trying to emulate in some way sonically. So I think all of the reading that I did and all of the studying of poets that I did helped me consider what I wanted from my own voice. And also just a bunch of soul music. I come from a house that played music every Saturday morning while you were cleaning. And it's the house that still does that every Saturday morning while you're cleaning. So I mean, my son the other day was, on the way to school. He's 16, and sometimes he's singing the latest rapper, but the other day I caught him singing UB40's Red Wine, and I was like, man, what kind of eclectic kid are we building here? But that's because music, especially the narrative in music, it just makes its place in our lives very firmly. And so the narrative in poems and leaning on that rhythm and music in poems is kind of the genesis of my voice.
Well, we want to thank you for your voice, your soul, and your beautiful poems. Remica, we're delighted to have you with Sign and Breath.
I'm excited to be here.